Dan Rapaport. Welcome to Sports Management Podcast.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me on. We've been trying to do this for a little while, so I'm happy we finally can make it happen.
Me too. I'm so excited. Lately, golf has been on many people's radar, partly because of the Netflix documentary, but also, LIV Tour, PGA Tour, everything that's going on. But before we go into that, you are a writer and a podcaster at Barstool Sports. You started
Yes.
A couple of months ago in August of 2022. So can you tell us a little bit about what it is that you do today?
Yeah, it's evolving. It's still changing. I'm still kind of trying to figure it out, to be honest with you, because so I come from a very classic journalism background. I went to journalism school here in the United States. I started working at Sports Illustrated right out of college, which is, obviously an iconic institution in sports journalism. Then I went to Golf Digest, which was, a little bit more specialized because it's all golf, but it was still writing for a magazine, writing for a website, sort of same idea as before. Barstool's been a completely different journey. It's, the emphasis is not so much on the written word, it's more on videos and our podcast, which does really well. And merchandise is a big part of our business. So I think I still do the same stuff that I did before as far as covering professional golf from a sort of insider's perspective, where there are a couple of very famous journalists here in the United States. Adam Schefter in football, Adrian Wojnarowski in basketball. In soccer, I don't know if you're a soccer fan, but Fabrizio Romano is one who comes to mind. Yeah. I kind of try to cover it from that insider's perspective, and but in new mediums. Whereas before, if I had a scoop or I had some time with a player, maybe it would be an article. Now it's a video or we do something, a podcast. So it's just different mediums, but I think it's sort of the same information and the same insight.
Interesting. And I listened to an interview you did with Barstool in one of your own podcasts there, that you said that it's more free now at Barstool. It's a different. So how does it differ to be at Barstool Sports? That is sometimes a bit. They can be controversial at times. So
yes.
They are not afraid of saying what they think. So how is it to work for a company like Barstool compared to like Sports Illustrated or Golf Digest, for example?
Yeah, it's very, very different. So I was a salaried employee at my last two jobs, and I reported to editors. And so any sort of content conversation was multi-layered, multi-levels. If I wanted to do something, I had to pitch it to someone. They had to decide whether it was a good idea, decide if they had the money to produce it, how we were going to do it. It was going to be a video, was it going to be an article? And it felt like a lot of red tape. And there were a lot of people who were above me in the sort of corporate structure or the corporate hierarchy, who were above me and who were, making a lot more money than I was for reasons that I didn't really understand, besides them being older than I am or having been there longer. In my opinion, it was a bit of an outdated model of, we have these people behind the scenes who make the most money. And then we have these people who are in front of the camera or public facing who are actually growing the brand, but don't have control of their own content and don't have much upside when it comes to capitalizing on their own content. And that was starting to really frustrate me. I felt like from the time I had joined, I'm being really honest now. I hope that no one really listens to this from Golf Digest. I'm sure they will, but from the time that I signed my contract from the time that I joined Golf Digest in 2019 until I left, my profile in the game had risen considerably. And I felt like I had done really good work and I had brought a lot of eyeballs and a lot of energy and a lot of juice to the brand. And I saw virtually no reward for it, which I didn't like. I think that's only human nature. I got a call from Barstool that said, we're going to offer you a 2-year contract. You're going to have basically creative freedom to do whatever you want to do. We will support you because we are hiring you because we think you know how to cover golf. And that was so different than the job I was before, which was a bunch of guys who had been there for 20 years who came up in a magazine, were telling me how to cover golf. And it was good. I liked it at the time. It wasn't bad. It wasn't like I was unhappy, but I had this opportunity where someone came in and said, we believe in you. We believe in your brain. We believe in that you have your finger on the pulse of the sport, and we want to give you the support and see what you can do with it. And that's where we are now. I have a couple of YouTube series that are coming out in the next couple months that I pitched to Golf Digest so many times. And there was always, I don't know if we can sell it, or, I don't know, we did this, we did that, we did the other, and nothing ever happened. With Barstool, it was like, I gave them an idea, they put it to the sales team took it to market, boom, 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 and it's made. So it's just a completely different energy. It's a lot younger. And I feel like Barstool basically supports, they sign people who they believe in, they support them with resources. And then look, if I suck, they won't renew my contract. But at least they give you a chance to really soar.
Yeah, I understand that. And it's interesting point that you said, because I was talking to Kevin Weeks recently. He's a media professional in ice hockey, mostly, actually only in ice hockey. But he said that as well, that he wanted to break some news, and he reached out to the networks, and they said, nah, it's not really the time. And then, like you said with your YouTube series, and he just ended up doing it himself on his own channels. So I see where you come from. And I think that's a common thing nowadays.
Well, it's like, this podcast, for example, right? All you have to do to make this podcast is buy that microphone, the same one that I'm using.
Yeah.
And, maybe pay a little bit for some software, and that's it.
Yeah.
Back in the day, you needed these big places for distribution. If it's 1990, okay, and I have a piece of information and I want to get it out to the world, how am I going to do that? You have to go through one of these publishers. It's no longer the case. I have, a good following. I can go direct to the consumer with my content and with my information.
Yeah.
So, it's just the world of media is evolving rapidly. It already has evolved rapidly. And I wanted to go to a place that I felt like was on the right side of it.
I understand that. You said that your profile had risen rapidly when you signed with Golf Digest. And now it must have, have gone to a different level after the Netflix series Full Swing, obviously. I am not a hardcore golf fan. I follow the big news.
That's good. That's good. If you watched it, that's a good sign.
I did watch it and I loved it.
Yeah.
And
that's great.
But for example, I didn't know who you were before the series. And now I started following your your Twitter and so on, and what you're reporting, and I'm a big fan of you, and that's why I reached out to you. I wanted to do the podcast. So I assume that there are more people like me who, after Full Swing, they also saw your great work.
Yeah, it was already sort of starting to pick up with Barstool, because Barstool's, you're in Sweden, you said, right?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, so we're not necessarily very big in Sweden, but Barstool's very, very big here in the United States. But Netflix is a different level. I knew, I'd seen the numbers. I think it's like 250 or 260 million subscribers. And you think about how many people share passwords. So it's really closer probably to like 500 million people.
Yeah.
But it's funny, the way that I kind of realized was, so the show came out on a Wednesday, February 15th. And I was at the golf tournament at Riviera, a Tigers event in LA. But there were no fans on the golf course on Wednesday, because they didn't sell tickets. It was a practice day. There were no fans. So, the show comes out. I'm just out there in my job, don't really notice anything. Thursday was the first day of the tournament. I wasn't there. I had an appointment or something. I couldn't go to the golf tournament, so I wasn't there. So I missed it on Thursday. So, just go to wherever I'm going, come back, nothing. I show up on Friday, and this is 2 days after the series has come out. And it was like overnight, like everyone knew who I was. It was unbelievable. It was like I couldn't walk. And obviously golf tournaments it's not real life. Everyone who's in a golf tournament loves golf and is a golf person. So, I walk my dog down the street in New York, and maybe one person says something. But at these golf tournaments, you get all the golf nuts in one area together.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was crazy. It was like overnight, everyone knew who I was, and I couldn't walk 25 steps without someone saying Dan or Full Swing or this or that. So I feel extremely fortunate to be involved in golf in this moment. As you mentioned, even before the Netflix show, just with LIV, it's just been all over the news. It's been everywhere. Even before I went to Barstool, I was on CNN and I was on BBC, last year And that would never happen if it wasn't for LIV Golf. No one, no one would have me on to talk about, birdies and bogeys, but you start talking about trust and loyalty and betrayal and Saudi Arabia and dismembering journalists. And, that crossed over into just normal, real news, not just golf news. So I feel very fortunate to be in this sport at this time.
I understand that. And it's, as you say, it's really on everyone's minds at the moment. So let's jump to LIV. Let's talk about that. So
sure.
There are different, sides of this. I feel that some people say that LIV is terrible because it comes from, it funds from Saudi money, and that's terrible. Some say that they should be able to do whatever they want. Competition, it's freely. And someone is, a little bit in between that. LIV Tour is not the greatest, but it has made the PGA Tour make it a little bit better for the players on that tour. So, just what is you have obviously a greater insight than I do. So, what is your opinion on the whole thing?
So it's a big question. Look, I'm not a huge fan of the Saudi Arabian government. I don't think that that's controversial to say, but I understand how world markets work. And I'm a big soccer fan or football fan. So, them buying Newcastle and other Middle Eastern countries having a big role in European sport. I think it's much more normalized where you guys are.
Yeah.
Formula One. I know that Manchester City is owned, I think, by Qatar. They're all over, and the way that markets work is economies are global these days. And if you really look into where money comes from, it's a very dangerous game. I'm not a huge, I don't think that the league is going to succeed from a financial standpoint, but that's just me saying what I think. I don't hold it against players for taking the money and for going. Everyone's decision-making process is impacted by their own personal lives and experiences and circumstances that we can't possibly understand. And if someone offered me $150 million, it would be very hard to turn down. I know that for a fact. That doesn't mean that I'm rooting for the league. It doesn't mean that I think it's going to succeed. I don't think it will succeed. Well, I guess it depends on what your definition of success is, because if they want to make money, that's not going to happen. If they want to keep having events like they had last week where they go to Australia and everyone has a great time and it's a party, and then they can keep doing that. They can afford to throw good parties. They have a lot of money to do that. I don't think it will be a commercial success, but I don't really buy the whole, oh, they're so terrible because this is coming from Saudi Arabia. I just think that that's a really fraught game and it becomes hypocritical very quickly. I still enjoy watching the PGA Tour more. The LIV stuff with it just feels like a bit of a circus for me, but I'm not like morally against it, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. But can you see that the start of LIV Tour has, put pressure on the PGA Tour to, pay their players better and so on?
Of course. I mean, of course, it's not, I don't think it's a debate, right? Like, if we look at just how much has changed, that's the crazy thing. I just looked at the calendar here. It's April 26th. LIV, it's not even 1 year. It's not even 1 year that this thing has existed. And the PGA Tour has completely overhauled its entire model. The FedEx Cup playoffs is no longer 125, it's 75. You've got these designated events that are paying these guys $3.6 million for winning them. It used to be that 2 million was like unfathomable. Now all of a sudden they're at 3.6 million. You've got the player impact program, to pay guys who aren't necessarily playing their best, but are bringing attention to the sport. There's now a pathway directly for guys to go straight from college golf to the PGA Tour. That was never a thing before. Competition breeds innovation. And I don't think there's a single serious person in the world who would deny that the emergence of LIV Golf has lit a fire under the ass of the PGA Tour, and that the players themselves are better off. Now, are the fans better off? That's an interesting question, because on one hand, there are these designated events where the best players are playing against each other more often. On the other hand, there has been a split. A lot of the best players in the world are not playing on the PGA Tour. But if you're a professional golfer, I don't think, even if you didn't join LIV, I don't think that you're upset that LIV happened. Even Rory McIlroy, who has been probably the most vocal opponent of LIV
Mm.
said, you know, I think professional golfers everywhere can be thankful that this happened to some extent, because it's made everything. Yeah, it's just been like, you know, when you're the leader of a business and you know this, you know, you do sports, if you're the leader of a business and you're running your business without any sort of competition, really, for 30 or 40 years, it's just human nature. You're going to be a bit complacent. You're not going to have the same motivation to make changes and tweaks. And now that complacency is gone.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. If we, you know, put the politics and all of that from Saudi Arabia aside, and we just look how the competitions look. So the LIV Tour, they are guaranteed the money, while in PGA Tour, you need to perform to win the money. And I spoke to Eric Chavez from the PGA Tour. He works in the sales department, and he said that one of the great things with the PGA Tour is that it's a true meritocracy. That, you
I
know,
agree.
If you win, then you're the best, you win, and you get paid. Do you think that that's something that could be like a threat to the sport if you have guaranteed money and then the players don't have that, you know, the same incentive to win or play well?
You know, it's an interesting question, because we say that, right? But if you look at basketball, or you look at football, not in football is probably actually not a great example because they get injured so much, so those contracts are different. But if you look at basketball, or you look at baseball, or you look at soccer, you know, guys are on guaranteed contracts. That's how it works. Doesn't mean that all of a sudden they just stop trying because they're looking for another contract, right? I mean, I'm sure that I don't know who's the best, you know, I'm sure that Erling Haaland is on a guaranteed contract for Manchester City. And it doesn't, you know, he's a professional, he's an athlete. He's not gonna, because he's on that money, he's not just gonna stop trying. But at the same time, golf has always been different. It's always been different. It's always been that way. It's always been that sort of, you know, you eat what you kill. You know, you start the week with no money, and you got to earn it. But the PGA Tours is changing that too, right? I mean, these designated events are going to have no cut, which means that the last place guy is going to make a couple $100,000. So I don't see it. You know, I don't see. There are definitely guys who, at the end of their career, you know, if they're given a big payday, that they're going to just sort of ride off into the sunset. And I think you're sort of seeing that with some of the guys on the LIV Golf Tour, the Ian Poulters, the Lee Westwoods. Yeah. And these guys they're not really a factor anymore. And they're probably like, can't believe that they got all this money. They're like, this is the greatest thing in the world. But if you're Cameron Smith, or you're Brooks Koepka, or you're Patrick Reed, and you're in, you know, in your late 20s, or you're in your early 30s, and you're in the prime of your career, and you want to win majors, I don't think that a guaranteed money paycheck is just going to make you all of a sudden lose your incentive.
No, that's an interesting point. I think also that one of the things that made me more interested in the sport now was the characters of the players. And there, of course, the Netflix series plays a huge role. And my favorite episode was number 4 with Joel and Gino. Their relationship, and also that Joel is beating on himself so hard when he's like one of the best in the world. I found that episode was hilarious to me. Yeah,
I love that episode. And I think, you know, what it has done for Joel and Gino already is crazy. I was talking to Joel after, I think it was the Players Championship, which is one of the big tournaments in Florida here in March. And, you know, he's showing up to tee boxes, and everyone's chanting his name, and everyone's saying, take it off. And he's like, he comes off and he's like, I felt like Ricky Fowler, you know, and it's amazing what happens when you sort of remove the mask, right? When you are no longer just a pair of khaki pants and a hat, right? And you learn what motivates these people. It's the same as Formula One. That's how you develop fans. And golf has always been interesting because it's not a team sport, right? There's no, players aren't tied to a certain town or a certain city like they are in basketball or soccer or football. And so there were Tiger fans, you know, and then there were people who didn't like Tiger, but there weren't. This is a way for people to have rooting interest in actual people. And I think that's a really strong way to get people to tune in. And it sounds like that's what's been the case for you, is that, oh, you see Joel Damon's name on the leaderboard. Oh, you feel like you know Joel Damon because you've watched him on the show. Now you're going to tune in and watch. So that was the goal of the series always, was to show that there's, you know, and I think people historically thought that golfers were very vanilla. You know, just like I said, just sort of a khaki pants and a visor. That's what golfers were. But, you know, the modern PGA Tour player, most of them didn't grow up at country clubs. Most of them aren't what you think they are. And I think that the show did a really good job in kind of removing that veil.
I think so too. And it is confirmed, right, with the second season of the show.
Confirmed. There's shooting already happening. Yeah, 100% confirmed. So we're excited about that.
That's really great. So what exactly is your role in the series? I mean, of course, you're talking as an expert in the sport, but do you have any other, are you invested some otherwise in the show?
Yeah, this season was unique because, or the first season, because of the Matt Fitzpatrick episode. Matt and I go way back as friends, and so they wanted to highlight that. I don't know if that's going to be a thing again moving forward. I think my role will probably be more what it was in every episode besides the Fitzpatrick one, which was kind of just, adding insight and adding context and kind of connecting storylines. And but you just don't know. That's the thing about these shows is I sat for probably between 10 and 15 hours of interviews for season 1, and they probably used 6 minutes, 5 minutes of me speaking. And you sign a release that basically says you guys own this content, you can do whatever you want with it. And with Barstool, when we're making a video, I can talk to the editors or the producers and be like, hey, what's it looking like? What, is this in there and that in there? With Netflix, it's like you'll see when everybody else sees. So I won't have an answer for you, a definitive answer, but hopefully, fingers crossed, a similar role of just kind of helping explain to the people exactly what they're seeing.
Yeah, something to look forward to for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
Talking about these individuals, Joel and Matt that you mentioned, the biggest name for sure historically is Tiger Woods. And you had an interview with him a couple of years ago when you said that he stared right through your soul.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit quickly about that? Yeah,
this was it's the only time it's ever happened to me in my whole career. It's so funny. You ask thousands and thousands of questions and you forget one, and that's all people remember. No, it was 2020. It was the 2021 Hero World Challenge. I think it was his first press conference after the accident. So it was very intense in there. And I had a question planned that I was going to ask. And then he mentioned in the answer right before something about his leg being amputated. And I was like, well, I got to ask about that. Like, if the greatest player in the world says that he almost had his leg amputated, that's something that I'm going to follow up on. So I kind of pivoted from asking about what I was going to ask. And I was like, oh, I'm just going to ask this question about the amputation, and then I'll get back to my other question. So I said, basically something like, how close was the leg to actually being amputated? And he looks at me and he goes, it was close. And I just completely forgot my second question. The thought of Tiger Woods with no leg, kind of like crutching himself to the first tee at the Masters to hit like it just was running through my head, and I just completely forgot. And then he does this thing when he doesn't like a question, or he's being intense, or he just keeps staring at you. And so I'm trying to remember the question while Tiger Woods is just staring right at me. And eventually I had to say, I forgot. And, he was cool about it. We did like a little follow-up video afterwards.
Yeah, I saw that.
I've learned to write down my questions now.
Yeah, oh, sure. But it makes a funny story, at least.
I think it was overall a good thing. It was not on purpose. People accused me of forgetting it on purpose. It was definitely not on purpose. I mean, one or two people, but
okay.
yeah, no, I think it was definitely a good thing.
That's awesome. Before we wrap up here, is there something that you would like to mention that I haven't asked you yet about, something in golf or something?
No, I just I respect what you're doing. Like we talked about, I get a lot of people who always ask me, how do I work at Barstool? How do I can do this, that, and the other. And it's like, well, let's see it. Do it. Like, actually go out there and do it. You won't believe how many messages I get from people that are saying, I can do this and I can do that. And I'm like, great.
Show it.
Do it. Yeah. Like, do it. No one's going to believe you. Like, and the other thing I will say is, if anyone is listening to this, my biggest piece of advice is don't respond to people on social media. Just don't do it. It's all they want. I mean, no. Like haters. I'm saying don't respond to haters.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'm not saying to anyone at all. If people are asking questions, that's fine. But I get people ask, how do you not respond? Because there's so many people who comment on all my videos. Oh, you suck so much. Everything's terrible, blah, blah, blah. all they want is for you to notice and for them to know that you're reading it.
Yeah.
So don't reply. The best reply to a hater always is no reply. Every time you reply, you think you're doing a good thing. 10 minutes later, you'll be like, damn it, I wish I didn't reply. I wish I didn't give him that attention. I wish I didn't step in the mud. Be the bigger person. There is no rule that you have to reply to haters on social media. There's no rule.
No,
so
for sure. So yeah, I agree with that. I'm building this platform and I'm not having the same size that you do. So I haven't received so much negative one, but if I get some haters, I will definitely just ignore them.
Just ignore them.
Yeah.
Just ignore them. That's my biggest. I mean, that was not just for you. It's for anybody who's listening.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
You never come out on top.
Yeah.
It's like both people lose in that scenario.
Yeah, I know. I know we're on time. Last question, really quick. I asked this to everyone. If you could choose the next guest on this podcast, who do you think I should talk to?
Ooh, that is a good question. So you just talk to sports media people in general. You don't talk to
so sports.
You should talk to someone from LIV.
Oh, that's interesting.
You should talk to someone from LIV. I mean, you've spoken to the PGA Tour. I would talk to someone to LIV because they're trying to do something that no one else is, which is like take down a major sports league. I think for your business, I think that would be really interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I'll look into that.
There you go.
Dan, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the Sports Management Podcast. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks, Marcus. Talk soon.